Hey, this is Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Today I'm going to show you how to install a Tusk Quiet-Glide Skid Plate on your Kawasaki KRX 1000. These Kawasaki KRXs are awesome machines. They come set up really well from the factory, but there are a couple of points that could use a little improvement. So one of those areas is the skid plate. Now, we like to run the Tusk Quiet-Glide Skid Plate on all of our machines. The reason we're running that Tusk skid plate on our KRX is it comes with a UHMW 3/8 inch thick material that is super tough. It has recessed hardware, so it's not going to hang up on any obstacles. And as the name suggests, it's made out of a quiet glide material. So when you're sliding over rocks and that kind of thing, you're not going to get a lot of noise, and it's not going to hang up on rocks like an aluminum or other metal skid plate would. Now, this skid plate, it's also going to give you a little more coverage underneath on the rocker panels, and it even comes further up on the floorboard. So with all that added protection, you're going to be able to focus on driving instead of worrying about something coming up and damaging the bottom side of your machine. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get this skid plate installed. As far as parts go, when you go to open your box, you're going to have a hardware pack in there, and you want to lay all of these parts out in order and make sure that you have everything there that's supposed to be there to complete the job. So this is going to come with your cup washers, some UHMW spacers, some of these square nuts, a couple of drill bits, aluminum cup washers, and then a variety of fasteners. Now, as far as the skid plate goes, it's going to be 3 different pieces, and you're also going to have some instructions that came with that hardware pack. You're going to want to go through those and get familiar with the install process before you begin. The first thing you need to do is gain access to the bottom side of your machine. So most of you at home, what you're going to do is use some machine ramps and drive your side-by-side onto that. That way you have access to the skid plate. Now for us, we've tipped our machine on the side. Do not do this at home. It is dangerous. You could get hurt. So we're only doing this to give you guys a better view of what we're actually doing. So once you've safely raised your machine off the ground, you can go ahead and start removing your stock skid plates. I do want to point out that none of the hardware from the stock skid plate will be reused. And we're also going to remove these 3 lower rocker panel bolts. Next, we're going to locate the rear section of our skid plate, and we're going to use hardware groups in this order: A, E, B, and D. And all of the hardware we're installing, we're actually going to leave it just hand tight for now. Once the entire skid plate is installed, then we'll start tightening everything down. All right, these 5 bolts that we just installed, that's hardware group A, and that's going to be your cup washer and the M6 by 16 millimeter hex flange bolt. The next step is to install hardware group E, and that's going to be these 3 bolts. You're going to have your cup washer, you've got this nut plate, and then this is the 5/16 by 3/4 inch self-tapping screw. We'll just set the nut plate on the back side, and again, we're just tightening these finger tight. Now, one thing I want to point out with hardware group E, when you do go to tighten these up, it's going to be a lot easier since they have that nut plate on the back. Kind of pull down on the skid plate while you tighten them up. But anyway, we're going to move on to hardware group B. Now this is going to be your M6 by 25 millimeter hex flange bolt, your cup washer, and your UHMW spacer. This one's 3/8 inch thick. So these spacers, they're going to go between on the back side of the skid plate and between your frame. Then we'll set the bolt in place. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to put the cup washer in place and slide the bolt through it. And you can see why it's so important to leave all this hardware loose. That way we make sure everything fits before we get it tightened down. All right, next up is hardware group D. So that's going to be these 2 holes right here. And we need to drill the existing holes out. It's going to be 9/32 is what we're drilling them out to. And Hardware group D, you're gonna have a cup washer and the 5/16 by 3/4 inch self-tapper. So this one's gonna take the T40 Torx bit. The next step is to set this middle skid plate in place. It may be helpful to have a friend hold it up, or you can use a jack to help hold it up as well. And we're gonna use hardware group A first, but we're not gonna do all 7 of hardware group A. We're gonna do the first 5 bolts on this back side. Next, we're gonna take hardware group B, which is the M6 by 25 millimeter bolt, the cup washer, and the thinner spacer, and we'll put those in these 2 locations. And these spacers are just gonna go in between the skid plate and the frame. Now for hardware group C, this is gonna be essentially the same as B, but you're gonna have thicker UHMW spacers, and we're gonna go in these 2 holes right here. Now again, with these spacers, they just go in between the skid plate and the frame. Now we're gonna put our last 2 bolts in for hardware group A. Next, we're gonna install hardware group G into the rocker panel side. So this is gonna be your aluminum cup washer, and then you also have your M6 by 25 button head bolt. This is gonna take a 4 millimeter Allen key. Then we'll go ahead and do these same steps on the other side. So at this point, we're not gonna do hardware kit D or J right now on this middle section. So we're gonna go ahead and move to the front portion of the skid plate. All right, now with the front section of the skid, we're gonna start with hardware group A in these 3 holes. All right, our next step is to drill these 4 holes with our 9/32 inch drill bit. Just make sure you don't drill too far through and damage anything on the back side. And they're already marked for us. They have some holes already in them. We just need to make these bigger. The next step is to install hardware group H. So this is gonna be your aluminum cup washer, your 6 millimeter flange bolt, and then you also have this 6 by 20 millimeter button head bolt. So we'll go ahead and put both of those in place. Next, we're gonna install hardware group F. So that's gonna be your cup washer and your 5/16 by 1/2 inch self-tapping bolt. And then last, we're gonna install hardware group A onto the front. All right, the next step is to adjust the skid plate for optimal fit and tighten down all of the hardware that we've installed so far. So a good place to start is with this middle skid plate. So I'm gonna go ahead and start tightening these down. All right, now that we have everything tightened down, we need to start drilling a couple more holes. So we're gonna make a punch mark for hardware group D that goes right in here and down here. You wanna make sure you're perfectly centered in the circle. And for that, I'm just using this auto centering punch, but if you just have a punch and hammer, that works fine too. The next step is to drill our holes. We're using the 9/32 inch drill bit, and we're gonna apply some tape to it, just to the depth that we actually want to go. So, you know, right around 1/8 of an inch, less than 1/4 of an inch, and that way we don't damage anything on the other side when we drill this hole. And that's just going to let us know when we've gone to the correct depth and help prevent the drill from going in any further. And now we'll install the self-tappers. All right, now to get our front portion of the middle skid plate attached to the machine, we're gonna drill holes in all of these remaining spots, and the order is gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But as you drill, you're gonna drill and then put the self-tapper in its place. This is gonna be hardware group J. And just keep in mind, we've already applied some tape to our 7/32 inch drill bit, so you don't damage anything underneath. We've taped this off at 1/4 inch. And if you wanna be on the safe side, you can remove your floorboards, that way you don't damage them. And the other thing, you can also have a friend help you push this UHMW up into place if that's going to help you out. Now we'll do these same steps on the other side. Once you've done that, that's all you're going to need to do if you have a stock machine. If you have aftermarket accessories, there is a chance that you might need to modify the skid plate and cut it to fit. So this UHMW can be cut using wood tools, and we are going to run an aftermarket bumper, so we're going to have to make some small cuts so we can fit that bumper on as well. That's all there is to installing the Tusk Quiet-Glide skid plate on your Kawasaki KRX 1000. If you need the skid plate, it's available on our website along with any other parts and accessories you would want for your machine. So be sure to check that out. We offer free shipping on orders over $75. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more helpful content like this. Thanks for watching.